and welcome back to another episode of FPL Squad Picks. It's game week 6, and thanks for joining me in this video. We're going to take a little look at my points from game week 5, have a look at some transfer options, go through the fixtures for game week 6, and also have a little bit of extra news at the end regarding injury, and also taking a little look at some strategy plans for the rest of the game weeks coming up. If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell not to miss more content coming soon. So here's my game week 5 team. Finished the week on a score of 59 points. Wasn't a bad score, but unfortunately it did see my first red arrow of the season. This dropped me down just over 32,000 places, which isn't a terrible score, still in a decent position to hopefully finish the season on a good score. I think this game week threw a lot of FPL managers. Prior to the transfer deadline, there were a lot of managers toying with the idea of looking at a potential wild card, or maybe looking at taking hits to get certain players in and building for those Chelsea assets. There was even some doubt around some of the Leeds players in that first fixture, with both Rafinha and Harrison a doubt. This did see Harrison out with an injury, but Rafinha still played the fixture and managed to get a good return. But by the end of that fixture, this has left both Rafinha and Ayling down as a yellow warning with potential injuries. Another bit of late-breaking news before that deadline was the potential for a bit of a shift around in the Liverpool defence. A lot of people were talking about potentially Robertson getting rested and Tsimikas having a start. I think this news broke very, very late, but what I don't think anyone was expecting was that not only Robertson would be getting a rest, but due to a very late illness with Trent Alexander-Arnold, this saw him benched and missing out for points this fixture. I think this played into a lot of FPL managers' hands if they were able to have some bench options that was able to come on and get some decent scores, such as Livramento managing a clean sheet against Manchester City, and also those that had Tsimikas down on their bench and not as third choice saw him come on for another clean sheet as well. For my team, unfortunately, my bench was looking a little bit sparse. No one was able to come on, with Antonio ineligible to play with a red card in the last fixture, Obafembi not playing for Southampton, and Amati has now lost his place to Vestergaard in the Leicester defence. So being that I didn't make any transfers this game week and decided to roll the transfer, I was playing it a little bit close to the line, but would have gotten away with it if Trent had managed to play in this fixture. But even though this game week still saw me with a red arrow, I wasn't too disheartened as I did get a decent score across a lot of my attackers. It was the right choice to captain Salah this game week, both Ronaldo and Rafinha managing some goals and some bonus points too. Then there was also the Benrahma goal and bonus points in that fixture. Now I know a lot of managers may be looking at this, especially non-Benrahma owners, and could potentially say that the original shot that he took wasn't on target, which would mean that the deflection from Varane into the goal would make it Varane's own goal, and then it would be an assist for Benrahma only. But as a Benrahma owner, I'm pretty pleased that they managed to class that as a goal for him, because this certainly kept me in the race. So here we have the game week 6 fixture focus. So as you can see in the top right hand corner, we've got attack, defence and goals, all colour coded, and they relate to the fixtures beneath. So those colours give you an indication as to where I think we can potentially pick up some points across these games. So we start off with a big one. Chelsea versus Man City. Rock in a hard place. Which one's going to fall first? Both teams have an outstanding defence, but I do think that as soon as someone gets a goal, it could open things up a bit more, because equally both teams have a really good attack. So it's quite a hard game to call, but I do think we'll see some goals in this game and potentially both teams to score. I know that this week are seeing a lot of FPL managers going for those Chelsea players early, but personally I still think I'm going to hold off one more game week before they start in the game week 7 with their good run of fixtures. And also this week a lot of FPL managers are starting to move on the Man City assets such as Torres, due to rotation, due to not scoring as many as he was in previous game weeks, which we kind of always knew that if you go for Man City, you're going to risk that Pep roulette. Next up, I've gone for a heavy attack with Manchester United. I think that Aston Villa have been a little bit leaky at the back. We all know that Martinez is a great shot stopper, but you'd like to think up against Ronaldo, Bruno and Greenwood, they have the potential to bag a few goals in this fixture. Then we have a game that could see quite a lot of goals. I think the Leeds and West Ham fixture is a prime one to target for a lot of goals. As rusty as Leeds have been, especially with all their injuries and players out at the moment in the defensive line, they've shown they can still be attacking and get goals at the other end. So I do think West Ham this season have tightened things up a little bit at the back, especially with the introduction of Zuma, but they haven't tightened up to the point where we can start banking on their defensive assets to get us some clean sheets. I think this week we'll see a lot of players bringing back in Antonio if they took them out for his previously missed game. And for all those managers like myself, I think people like Antonio, Benrahma are going to be great holds for this fixture. And I don't think there's any rush really to get the Leeds players out, albeit that those attacking assets for Leeds are injury free. A quick mention for the Watford V Newcastle fixture. There has been quite a lot of hype and interest in Ismail Sarr, especially after his 2 goals in the previous fixture against Norwich. Now I know that some people might say that obviously Norwich was an easier fixture to be able to get goals, but in this game week and next, they see 2 relatively good fixtures to be able to get some attacking returns in Newcastle and Leeds. So if you're looking for a cheap midfield option, he could be the way to go. If you are looking for some forward attacking assets and looking to do that on a little bit of a budget, you could potentially look into Dennis and King. I'm not sure how nailed on their minutes are between the both of them, but both those players are also picking up some returns and could be good enablers to be able to pick up some more premium options. Next up is the Brantford v Liverpool fixture. Now Liverpool have seen the return of Van Dijk at the back, which has certainly helped in getting their defensive line structured, set up and able to keep those clean sheets again. So I'd like to think that they have a good potential to keep a clean sheet in this fixture, and at the other end of the field still pick up some good attacking returns. That being said, Brentford have made a really good start to the season and haven't been letting many goals slip by. In comparison to Liverpool, I know that the opposition hasn't been as good on paper, and you would probably expect Liverpool to put some goals past them, but I'm not sure if it'll be that 3-0 scoreline that we've been seeing in the other fixtures. I think this could be a little bit closer, maybe a 1 or even 2-0, or potentially 2-1 if you can see maybe Ivan Toney or Mbeumo getting another return in this fixture. If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell not to miss more content coming soon. If you'd like to keep up to date with the latest video posts, locked in team selections and chat during the game week, then you can follow me on Twitter at FPL Squad Picks. So here's my team going into game week 6. As you can see, I have got some yellow flags on some players, and since making this video, Trent Alexander-Arnold has also come up as a yellow flag. As I mentioned previously, I've got 2 free transfers this game week. That's not to say I need to make both transfers. I should be able to get through with the team that I have, but with the potential for some players being out with injury, instead of just burning a transfer this game week, I think it could be a good opportunity to be able to solve some of those issues. So looking at a few potential transfers that I could do this game week would be to look at both those yellow flag players in Rafinha and Ayling. Now I think the Sarr move into the midfield has been a really popular one this game week, but I'm still not sure if Rafinha is the right move. And as he is only just a yellow flag at the moment, I think that there may be a potential that he could play in this fixture and still be okay. He didn't play in the midweek cup games, and no injuries for him were mentioned in the press conference previously. But coming up against both West Ham this week and Watford next week, he's definitely an asset that I would like to hold on to if fit and available. So that being said, if I still wanted to bring in Sarr, there are some potential moves that I could make across that midfield. And I think given that both Salah is in good form and against a good fixture, and Benrahma is also now back into the good fixtures and still managed to get a return against what was a tougher fixture against United on paper, the other 2 to look to would be Jotter and Greenwood. Now both weren't in the starting lineups for their team's mid-week fixtures in the Cup, but Greenwood did come on for some minutes. I'm more sure that Greenwood will play a part this game week 6, as he was rested for most of that fixture and only came on for the last sort of 10 minutes. But with Jota, even though he did have a rest midweek, there is a lot of talk of Firmino back in training and pushing for his place back in that team. And as Jota has blanked in the last few games, this could see a bit of rotation between the 2. But again, I don't think I'm really in a position where I'm wanting to push these out, even if it was a case of that Jota started and came off after 60 minutes, or vice versa and Firmino started and Jota was the one to come on at 60 minutes. I'm still pretty confident that he could pick up a return against a tiring Brentford team, so I'm not sure if it's worth chasing the points and going for Sarr, but one thing this will do is put some extra money into the bank. Another potential move for this game week would be to do a little bit of housekeeping in the defensive lineup. So at the moment I've got Armati there as my 4 million defender, and unfortunately even though he is fit and available, he has been replaced in that starting lineup with a new signing of Vestergaard. So with a few yellow flags this game week, I think it would make sense to have a few more options that are able to come on off the bench. So being that Ayling has an injury concern and is a 4.5 million defender, I could save some money here and go for someone like Duffy, but he's playing in a team at the moment that has a high potential for clean sheets. And even though we've seen the likes of Tariq Lamptey return midweek in the cup game, I don't think they're going to rush a lot of their defensive assets that were out straight back into the team, being that Duffy has done so well. So as he is 4th choice defender within my lineup, I think I can afford it if he didn't play one game week. But if there's any last minute news that Trent Alexander-Arnold is out and it's beyond the deadline, then I'd be pretty confident for this week that he would play and be able to pick me up some points off the bench. So here's my starting 11 this game week before I've made any transfers. I still think it was a right play from last week to bench Antonio and to hold him through to this week, and now having 2 free transfers, it's enabled me to be able to tackle a few of these issues with the yellow flags. If we do end up getting any concrete news before the deadline date, I'm not completely against using both my transfers this game week and making both moves for Duffy and Sarr, but I do have something else in mind for both those transfers, which I'll mention a little later in the video. So I think given the fixtures that these teams have, I think it's a pretty strong lineup. I have mentioned on captaincy there's an option to go for Salah, Ronaldo, even Antonio or Rafinha if he's seen to be fit. Currently my captain shows Salah and I have vice-captaining on Ronaldo, but I do think that this could switch around before the deadline as Ronaldo has the home fixture, and it's just a case of that, will that Brentford team be spurred on by the crowd in their new stadium, making it a hostile environment for the Liverpool players, whereas a United team without Ronaldo midweek in the Cup and seeing them come out in the first round are in definite need of a bounce back performance. So this could see an energised Manchester United back with their original starting 11, push for that big win. So here we have a little bit of injury news. Now I did record this and I've had to re-record based on some breaking news that has come through, which is on Thursday before game week 6. So as we already mentioned earlier in the video, Trent Alexander-Arnold was rested from the last game week due to an illness. This is a bit of a question mark at the moment of whether he's going to start or not, but I think that if he's fit and able to play, Klopp is going to bring him straight back into this team. Some of the other players to mention are both the Leeds assets in Rafinha and BAMFORD. Now Rafinha has recently moved up to an orange flag from a yellow flag, and due to comments from Bielsa in a press conference, he has confirmed that BAMFORD will be out for game week 6. Unfortunately, he wasn't specific about anyone else in the team, namely Rafinha, and he just said that anyone else within the team, it was something along the lines of they may or may not play. We just don't know. Now this has seen Rafinha then move from a 75% chance playing to a 50% chance of playing. Now this isn't to say that he won't play at all. It's a bit of a question mark again on this player. So this is definitely something I'll be keeping an eye on because this could be the move to bring in Sarr. But if you're holding BAMFORD or both these players, this could be the move that you look to make this game week. I'm sure that anyone who brought out Antonio in their team last week will be looking to bring him straight back in now that BAMFORD is out. And it could be a straight switch. But if you haven't quite got the money for that and you're really struggling with who to go for and you're not confident maybe going for someone like Danny Ings, Dominic Calvert-Lewin potentially still being out, all those players around that price point, you might be looking for something a little bit cheaper. You could look towards someone like Ivan Toney and take the risks and the fixtures that he has. Or just to mention that it might be worth looking at those Watford frontline assets in Dennis and King. I do think Sarr has a bit more attacking threat than both those, but as mentioned earlier in the fixture focus part of the video, they have been getting returns in the last fixture, so hopefully they will continue to in this Watford setup. So I also mentioned that I had a little plan in terms of what to do with both those 2 free transfers. So this week, if I can get away with using just the 1 free transfer and carry over another one to next week, I think this is going to put me in an ideal position to be able to bring in some Chelsea assets for that fixture swing that starts from game week 7 onwards. Now I know that a lot of FPL managers have been talking about a few Chelsea assets to bring in, and the questions have been revolving around things like, is Lukaku essential? Will Alonso keep his place? Who else to target in the team? And can you get to those Chelsea assets without having to use a wild card? So first up for me is Lukaku. I don't think he's going to be an essential for me to bring straight into my team from game week 7, but certainly will be a player I'll be looking at after that game week. Obviously, every manager's team is going to look slightly different, and some of you have obviously got placeholders for those to be able to have the premium options in the front line as opposed to spread across the field. But for me, I've got both Salah in the midfield, a spread of money across the rest, and up front I've also got Ronaldo. And in that game week 7, Ronaldo plays against an Everton team that seem to be struggling and leak a few goals. So although Lukaku is probably capable of getting some points against a Southampton team, that Southampton team has just kept Man City at bay, whereas Everton haven't been looking as promising. And if they end up both getting just 1 goal each, I think maybe Ronaldo has a potential to get a slightly better score than Ronaldo by maybe catching that second goal or an assist. But as you can see from the bottom left-hand corner, the fixtures then from game week 8 onwards also get really good on paper for Chelsea. And equally, the balance swings the other way for Manchester United. They start to get really difficult. So a game week 8 transfer is something that I'm lining up to switch Ronaldo out and bring Lukaku in. There's also been a lot of talk around Alonso and if he will continue to keep his place in that Chelsea backline. At the moment, we've seen no reason really why not to think he wouldn't. I know that Chilwell did start and play in the midweek cup game, so this could begin the road to him to seeing him back in the Premier League lineup. But due to Alonso's outstanding performances, I think that's where we might see Chilwell being introduced a bit more to get his game time up before he starts deputising for Alonso in the Premier League games. So it will be a little bit of a risk, but you could go for Alonso and hope that he at least plays 3, maybe 4 out of these 5 fixtures. So from game week 7, if he doesn't get switched out for Chilwell in this game week 6 fixture, Alonso could be the potential person to bring in for game week 7. And if you don't want to go for that high risk, you could then go for someone like James, Rudiger or Azpilicueta. Now I know a lot of people might already have 1 or 2 Chelsea assets in their team and looking for that third one, especially given these fixtures. So there are a few other players that you could go for. If you weren't going to go for a second defender and double up in that lineup, you could potentially go for someone like Mason Mount. He seems to be getting the most consistent minutes across that midfield and is up there with the action to potentially get an assist or even sneak a goal in himself. If you do go for any of the other attackers, there is a big risk for rotation, such as Havertz, Werner and Ziyech. All 3 capable of getting really big scores, but all 3 high on the list of Tuchel Tombola. And finally, getting to those Chelsea assets without a wild card. So I think this game week, if you weren't like myself and rolled a transfer last week, for a lot of managers, this game week could be one where you can manage without having to have a really decent bench, managing with your starting 11. Hopefully, if you manage to hold Antonio, you can bring him back into that starting 11. And if you can roll the transfer, then as we mentioned, there's definite upside for bringing in someone like Lukaku and a Chelsea defender minimum. So if you are looking at game week 7 or game week 8 to bring in some Chelsea assets and you're only going to bring 2 in, you could potentially get away with this with just using your 2 free transfers and saving that wild card for a later time when hopefully it's more needed, where you may have to take a big points hits to get to that decent team, or there's potential doubts around any sort of international breaks that happen before that halfway point with the wild card runs out and we start again with the next wild card after that. So this week, if there aren't any big drastic moves needed in your team and you're only on the 1 transfer, it could be a good move to try and roll a transfer this week. So if you are stacked up on some premium options at the moment from the likes of Manchester United and Liverpool, you could start to chip away at that and bring some players in from Chelsea on game week 7. Or if you're happy to hold those United players against Everton, you could maybe look to just build slowly and bring 1 Chelsea player in for game week 7. And if you have got the 2 free transfers, make the other moves to bring in someone like Lukaku on that game week 8. Well, I hope that's given you a little bit of insight into what my mindset is for the next few game weeks and looking at what strategy I'm going to play. I'm fully aware that this may not work for your team as everyone's team value is different, but I hope that would have given you maybe a little bit of advice to maybe look at your team and look to plan not only for next week, but the following week and hopefully get those moves made without having to use your wildcards just yet. Feel free to leave a comment below about your transfer plans or any other questions you would like answered for your team this game week. If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell not to miss more content coming soon. Thanks for watching.